Good morning, students. Today, we'll try to take a review of automobile evolution, how the automobiles got evolved from time to time. That we'll try to see. Here, I have collected some information about automobile evolution that I am sharing with you. So, the important and the most important mechanical invention of all time is nothing but the wheel. The wheel has been used by man since the beginning of civilization. Most primitive technologies since the invention of the wheel have been based on its principles. The invention of the wheel perhaps happened in the late Neolithic age. It is likely that along with other technological advancements, it gave rise to the early Bronze Age. So here we will see in 4500 BC there is the invention of potter wheel and then how it got evolved from 4500 BC to 3300 BC to Chalcolithic, earlier wheeled vehicles, demonstration of the horse, then early Bronze Age, Middle Bronze Age, and finally the spoke wheels. Now we'll not go in more detail of well, but this is an important part of automobile. That's why I have explained you when the invention of wheel is done and what is the part of this invention in the human civilization. Mostly the eras are classified like this, or one more classification I will show you in the next picture. For the automobiles, it is the veteran era from 1880s to 1903, then Edwardian era from 1903 to 1915, then vintage cars from 1919 to 1930, then before World War II there is a one segment of automobiles. After World War II there is a impact on field of the automobiles, and finally the modern era which is still continuing, and we come right now in a modern era. Along with this we have some other classification also, but before this we'll see this is the first automobile which is invented in 1769 by Nicholas Joseph Cugnot, and this is how it look like. So we'll see about this. The history of automobile begins as early as 1769 with this creation of steam engine automobile capable of human transport. In 1769, the first steam powered automobile capable of human transportation was built by this Nicholas Joseph Cugnot. So after this, the seven eras in chronological order we can classify. The first one is the invention era. So after this Cugnot, the invention era begins, in which there is the invention of Benz car in 1885. The next is the innovation era after 1896, so in which automobile changed radically from those in previous years. From 1908, there is a manufacturing era, and after this, about 1920, there is a capsule era where there is a closed cars are manufactured from this era. Before this, the cars were open. We'll see one by one all these eras and what are the different automobile models in all these different eras. Classic era from 1930 to 1940 before World War II. Then after World War II, there is the integration era, and finally the modern era in which we are living, which starts around 1965 or 68, we can say. And what are the different car or the automobile models that we can see in the modern era nowadays. Now, one by one, we'll see. The first one is the invention era. So, as already we have seen, this era began with the invention of the Benz car in 1885 and continued till for around 10 years with the introduction of Henry Ford's first automobile. Before Benz introduced his motorized wagon, vehicles capable of human transport were mainly steam powered. That we have seen by Cognot in 1769 was the steam powered automobile, which is considered as a first automobile. The Benz car was the first car to use a gas powered internal combustion engine. This new horseless carriage had a powerful allure, but it confused people. Most found it a strange eccentricity that a carriage could move without a horse. So, this is something new at that time. Carbines produced industrial machines and static gas engines. The success of the company gave Carl Benz the opportunity to indulge in his old passion for designing horseless carriages. In invention era, Benz wanted to create an automobile that would run entirely on its own power. This would not be a simply another motorized horse carriage using the same technology that was in his beloved bicycle. He introduced the Benz patent motor wagon in 1885. It featured wire wheels, unlike the wooden ones on carriages, and a four-stroke engine of Benz's own design. It incorporated a very advanced coil ignition and evaporative cooling system rather than a radiator. Power was transmitted by means of two roller chains to the rear axle. So here you can see how the invention era has different car models from 1885. In 1885 there is a Benz is the first one. Then after that some other models are also there, 85, 88, 93, 95 and 1896. So these were the automobile models in invention era. After invention era there is a innovation era after 1896 where automobiles changed radically from those in previous years. Throughout the innovation era, whispered car use was still uncommon and the automobile was seen as more of a novelty than a genuinely useful device. The horse and carriage was the reliable method of transportation, but automobiles sparked people's imaginations. Automobile designers knew that the carriages from which had a relationship to the horse was not appropriate for their new automobiles. The new cars reflected other changes in society. The new industrialists were quickly replacing the old familiar ways with a fast paced lifestyle. As the automobile evolved in innovation era, it epitomized speed and freedom. Henry Ford was the first to bring his innovative designs to the new world in innovation era. Ford's automobiles were different from the other cars of that day. His new mass production methods and quality materials set his cars apart. The price of Ford's car was higher than the other vehicles. See, in the innovation era, these are the car models available in 1888, the Ford Model A, In 1904, there is a Model C. By the time in Europe, we have the Renault, Rolls-Royce, and in France too, the Renault model. The next is the manufacturing era. We started around at 1908 and which last before the beginning of World War One. Before 1908, designers favored the ornate Edwardian architecture and it was the preferred architectural style. This new industrial era reflected simpler, more affordable automobiles. Automotive technology developed rapidly due in part to hundreds of small manufacturers competing to gain the world's attention. Key developments included the electric ignition system, independent suspension, and four-wheel brakes. In manufacturing era, transmissions and throttle controls were widely adopted along a variety of cruising speeds. With the high price of the car, it was still only the hobbyists and enthusiasts who could afford one. It was not a reality for most of the people. Henry Ford, the father of modern assembly lines, revolutionized the industry when he established the Ford Motor Company in US in 1903. Ford had a global vision with consumerism as the key to peace. One of the first adopters of mass production techniques, he introduced the automobile to the ordinary man. He is credited with using the assembly line to make large numbers of inexpensive automobiles, coupled with high wages for his workers. Ford vowed to build a great car at a great price. His commitment to lowering cost led to many technical and business innovations. Ford introduced the Model T in October 1908 at the affordable price of $950. The year 1908 was significant, marking the point when the majority of automobile sales shifted from the hobbyist and enthusiast to the average user. Here you can see in the manufacturing era, there is a Model T by Ford in 1908, 1910, and 1915, and how it got changed. Simultaneously in Europe, there is a Bugatti and Fiat. In France and Italy, these are the models of Bugatti and Fiat. The next one is the capsule era, which is from around 1920 to 1930, where designers closed the body of the car. When designing a car interior, the value of semantic meaning can be manipulated by opening or closing the space. Simply changing the way the space is divided can change the emotional expression of the space for the consumer. The new closed body, accentuated by curved glass and privacy, had intrinsic value for the consumer. And in this capsule era, you can see there is a Model T, then Model A, and finally Candeli by General Motors in 1930. In Europe, Renault, Benz model, then Mercedes in Germany, Austin in UK, and Lancia in Italy. After classic era, after capsule era, there is a classic era. The classic era began with the depression in 1930 and ended around 1940, shortly before World War II. The cars of this period were less rectangular and industrial. The new automobiles were sleek and beautiful. The new technology allowed designers to create luxurious aerodynamic cars with big curves and deep arcs. The new Salon sedan body style was made for cruising and even incorporated a trunk or boot at the rear. Tires were wider and thicker than in capsule era, adding to the solidity of the vehicles. The old open top runboats, Phaetons, and touring cars were phased out by the end of classic era as wings, running boards, and headlights were gradually integrated into the body of the car. Integrated fenders and fully closed bodies began to dominate sales from classic era. So here you can see in classic era these are the different automobile models in US: Ford V8, Ford Roadster, Ford Ford DR sedan, whereas in Germany Mercedes-Benz 170, BMW, then Mercedes-Benz model 230, in UK Alvis, Rolls-Royce, and Aston Martin. In France we have 30 Bugatti 46S to Renault 4-door Berlin. In Italy, Lancia, Austria, and Fiat 1500. These are the classic eras. Next is integration era. Automobile design finally emerged from the shadows of World War II in 1949. This was the year that United States car makers General Motors, Oldsmobile, and Cadillac introduced modern one-piece auto bodies. The integration era joined all the parts of the car to make a shell very similar to the modern car body that we are using today or we know today. On the technology front, the biggest developments of this era focused on safety in the design of automobiles. So here you can see in the integration era in India in 1958 there is a Hindustan Motors Ambassador, and in 1965 also the 65 model Hindustan Motors Ambassadors along with US, Germany, UK, France, and Italy. So some specific designs are there in this integration era like Candelic that you can see on the right hand side. And final is the modern era. So the modern era is still continued. The modern era begins around at 1968 and continues to the present day. Designers today take into account not only the functionality but also consumers' emotional reactions to their automobiles. Designers are well aware of how to create the feeling of speed, but the feeling of speed is not the only expression the consumer is looking for. The semantic frame of the car is changing once again. Designers have recognized the potential to appeal to the consumer's personal desires and taste using all areas of an automobile. Automobile designers no longer only borrow semantic meaning from planes and missiles. Today they are looking at more organic, bionic forms to mirror. Car designers study the biomimicry of animals and insects and indirectly insert the animal's semantic frame into the look and feel of the car. It's not necessary to use the animal's literal form, the meaning is simplified. So, here some automobile models you can see in the modern era. Along with shown in this picture, you will find in market there are so many now. It is highly impossible to mention them all here. Specifically, we'll see in India we have 72 model, then in 1980, then Iranian model or Iranian car, even in 1990, 2000 and 2010. So this is all about the journey of automobile evolution. There are so many to explain, but this is a just general outline collected from different sources. So these are the references which I used while preparing this. So if time allows, I will prepare one more video based on this in which I will explain what are the different accessories, how one by one they got evolved and become a part of automobile. So thank you for today. Stay at home, stay safe.